The concrete kennel walls echoed with quiet whimpers as Rex, a once magnificent German shepherd, pressed himself into the shadowed corner. His golden eyes darted nervously at every movement, his body tense with 3 years of learned fear. The shelter staff had stopped trying to approach. His terror was too deep, his distrust too absolute. Then came Ella Foster, a physical therapist who understood patients better than most. She didn't reach through the bars or speak in that high-pitched voice people use with frightened animals. She simply pulled up a chair, sat just outside his space, and opened a book. For the first time in his recorded history at Riverside County Animal Services, Rex stopped trembling. Something about this woman was different. Joyce Parker, the weary shelter director, had signed too many euthanasia forms in her 20-year career. When she reviewed Rex's case file, extreme fear aggression, refuses all human contact. She prepared to add another, but something made her pause. Maybe it was the way Dr. Natalie Jiang insisted there were no signs of actual aggression, just profound terror. Or perhaps it was volunteer Finley Parker's observation that Rex watched passing staff with curious, not hostile eyes. Then came the morning they found Ella asleep against the wall outside Rex's kennel, her book still open in her lap, and Rex, for the first time, resting peacefully just 3 feet away on his side of the bars. The security footage would later show he'd slept there all night, facing her. The foreclosure notice nailed to the Thermal, California property should have been warning enough. When Animal Control Officer Oscar Dominguez kicked in the rotten back door, the stench hit him first, then the sound. A weak, rasping bark from the overgrown yard. What he found would haunt him. A skeletal German shepherd chained to a rusted pole, his water bowl bone dry, his collar grown into his neck. The dog didn't resist as Oscar cut him free, didn't react when loaded into the truck. 3 years of neglect had hollowed him out, body and soul. At Riverside County Animal Services, they named him Rex King, hoping he might one day live up to it. But first, he'd need to remember how to be a dog again. Oscar Dominguez's radio crackled as he surveyed the abandoned property. "Dispatch, I've got a code 20 severe animal neglect. German Shepherd male, approximately 3 years old." His flashlight beam caught sunken amber eyes reflecting back from beneath a collapsed porch. The dog didn't growl, didn't retreat, just stared with the blank resignation of a creature that expected nothing but pain. Back at the shelter, Dr. Natalie Jiang worked urgently to remove the embedded collar while Joyce Parker reviewed intake paperwork. Neither noticed Ella Foster in the waiting area, there to donate old linens, about to have her quiet life turned upside down by a broken dog she hadn't even met yet. Forensic analysis of Rex's teeth told the grim story. At least 3 summers spent surviving alone in that thermal backyard. The leaking garden hose had kept him barely hydrated. Scavenged trash and insects provided minimal nutrition. His paw pads bore the scars of desperate attempts to dig under fences. What broke Dr. Natalie Jiang's heart wasn't the physical damage. It was the behavioral assessment. Rex displayed textbook signs of learned helplessness, a psychological state where victims stop trying to escape pain because experience has taught them it's inevitable. When Ella first approached his kennel, Rex didn't just retreat. He flattened himself motionless, as if hoping invisibility might spare him whatever came next. The surgical sweet lights glared down as Dr. Natalie Jiang carefully dissected the collar from Rex's neck. What should have been a simple procedure became complicated as she discovered the nylon had sawed completely through skin in 2 places, fusing with scar tissue. Her assistant had to leave the room when they found maggots in the deepest wound. Through it all, Rex lay eerily still. Not sedated, just resigned. Post-op, Joyce Parker reviewed the disturbing findings with Animal Control. This wasn't simple neglect, it was prolonged criminal cruelty. Meanwhile, in recovery, Rex startled awake when Ella quietly entered his run. Her hands deliberately visible, her voice a soothing murmur. For the first time since arrival, his tail twitched. The shelter's behavioral logs told a heartbreaking story. Rex refused to eat if anyone stood near his kennel. He'd press into the far corner, trembling, until they left his food and retreated. Even gentle Finley Parker, their most experienced handler, couldn't get within 5 feet without triggering panic. Then came Ella's third visit when she did something radical. She placed the food bowl midway in his run, sat against the opposite wall and closed her eyes. Security cameras captured the moment. Rex's hesitant approach, his frantic glances at her still form, the way he snatched a mouthful of kibble before darting back to safety. It wasn't much, but for a dog who'd rather starve than risk contact, it was everything. The euthanasia list on Joyce Parker's desk had 7 names. Rex's was circled. "We've given him 3 weeks, she told Dr. Jiang. "He still won't let anyone touch him. We're not a sanctuary." The staff meeting that followed was tense, until Finley played the security footage from the night before. There was Rex, stretched out near the front of his kennel, unprecedented. Watching Ella read, unthinkable. Even more astonishing, when she'd absent-mindedly reached to adjust her shoe, Rex hadn't flinched. "Give me 48 more hours," Finley pleaded. In the hallway outside, unaware her life was about to change, Ella studied Rex through the bars, unaware she was being studied right back. Finley Parker knew the statistics: dogs with Rex's level of trauma rarely recovered enough for adoption. But something about Ella's quiet persistence had sparked hope. "Look at the footage," Finley urged Joyce, pointing to the screen where Rex now took treats from Ella's open palm without retreating. "That's not just progress. It's a miracle." Joyce hesitated, then made the call that would alter 3 lives. She moved Rex to the hold list. Meanwhile, Ella found herself visiting daily, drawn to this damaged creature in ways she couldn't explain. When Dr. Jiang mentioned Rex's military-style scar, something clicked, but the full truth remained just out of reach. The donation bin by Riverside County Animal Services front desk was overflowing when Ella arrived that first day. She'd planned to just leave her bags and go, until a sound stopped her cold. Not the usual shelter cacophony, but one soft, broken whimper cutting through the noise. Following it led her to Run 14, where a gaunt German shepherd lay motionless in the shadows. Their eyes met, and something inexplicable passed between them. Ella would later describe it as recognition. Shelter supervisor Jeff Hayes found her still there an hour later, sitting cross-legged outside the kennel, tears streaming as Rex, for the first time, held her gaze without fear. Neither knew it yet, but their journey together, and the shocking truth about Rex's past, was just beginning. Ella Foster had worked with trauma patients for years, but nothing prepared her for the connection that flashed between her and Rex in that quiet kennel. His amber eyes, dull with suffering just days before, now held a glimmer of wary curiosity as he studied her. Shelter staff whispered behind clipboards. They'd never seen him make eye contact before, let alone hold it. Dr. Natalie Jiang noted the physiological changes in Rex's chart: decreased heart rate, relaxed body posture. But the real miracle wasn't medical. It was the way this broken dog leaned slightly forward when Ella spoke, his ears pivoting to catch each soft word, as if recognizing a voice from some half-remembered life. Finley Parker reviewed the security tapes in disbelief. In 7 days, Ella had accomplished what trained professionals couldn't. Rex now waited by his kennel door when she arrived. Joyce Parker theorized it was Ella's calm energy. Dr. Jiang suspected phenomenal chemistry. The truth was simpler and stranger. When Ella sat reading aloud, Rex would cock his head at certain words: steady, watch, hold, his body responding to commands no civilian dog would know. Neither realized yet these were military K-9 terms. That revelation would come later, when a wheelchair-bound veteran named Derek Vaughn walked into the shelter searching for a ghost. The paperback trembled in Ella's hands as she voice-cracked reading Chapter 12. Not from fatigue, from shock. Rex lay stretched at her feet, his muzzle resting across her shoes. Shelter staff froze mid-motion, exchanging stunned looks. 2 weeks earlier, he'd cowered from raised voices. Now here he was, voluntarily crossing the kennel's threshold to touch a human. Ella didn't dare move, barely breathed, as Rex sighed deeply. His first relaxed exhalation since arriving. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't just rehabilitation. It was homecoming. What she couldn't know was that 400 miles away, Derek Vaughn was waking from another. The hot dog piece should have been insignificant, just another training tool. But when Rex delicately took the offering from Ella's palm without nipping or retreating, Finley Parker burst into tears. Joyce Parker immediately called off the euthanasia review. Even hardened Jeff Hayes blinked rapidly. Because this wasn't just food acceptance, it was trust rebuilt atom by atom. Rex's tail gave one tentative wag, then another, as Ella whispered praise. The shelter cameras captured it all. The way his scarred shoulders finally relaxed. How his gaze kept darting to Ella's face as if memorizing her features. Meanwhile, in La Quinta, Derek Vaughn scrolled through shelter listings, unaware his missing partner was wagging for the first time in years. Joyce Parker's pen hovered over the paperwork. "I'm sorry, Ella. County policy, we've held him 6 weeks." The unspoken truth hung heavy. No rescue would take a dog with Rex's history. Ella's fingers tightened around Rex's leash, a recent milestone, as he pressed against her leg. Then Dr. Jiang rushed in with game-changing news. A retired military K-9 organization had seen Rex's file. Their director was flying in tomorrow. What none of them knew. The man boarding that plane was Derek Vaughn, carrying a worn photo of a younger Rex with that distinctive shoulder scar. The reunion about to unfold would leave no dry eyes in the shelter. The VA hospital notes described Derek Vaughn as nonverbal, severe PTSD. Therapists had tried everything until new physical therapist Nicole Mitchell made an offhand comment about her shelter volunteer work. Derek's head snapped up. "Shepherd?" he rasped, his first word in months. When Nicole described Rex, Derek's hands shook as he produced a tattered photo from his wallet. A grinning soldier with his K-9 partner. The resemblance was uncanny. Same scar, same intelligent eyes. "Shadow," Derek whispered. His name was Shadow. Nicole's call to Riverside Shelter would set in motion a reunion no one could have predicted, least of all Ella, who'd just been approved to foster Rex that very morning. The desert night erupted in fire and screams. Derek Vaughn's last memory before blacking out was shoving Shadow clear of the blast radius. Then, nothing. He woke stateside to crushing news. His K-9 partner had bolted into the chaos, never found. The military declared Shadow killed in action. For 3 years, Derek drowned in grief and guilt, until Nicole's call. Meanwhile, Rex suffered his own nightmare. Shipped stateside as damaged goods. Passed between homes until abandonment in Thermal. Now, as Derek's plane descended toward Palm Springs, Rex suddenly perked up during Ella's reading, his head tilting at a sound only he could hear, the distant roar of jet engines. Derek's wheelchair creaked as he entered Riverside Shelter, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where is he?" Ella stood frozen, Rex's leash in hand, as the German Shepherd went rigid. Then, a sound no one present would ever forget. A high, keening whine ripped from Rex's throat as he lunged forward, not in aggression but desperate recognition. Derek's hands flew up instinctively to the command position. "Reese!" he shouted, German for rise. And Rex, who hadn't responded to that word in years, sat bolt upright, paw raised in perfect formation. The shelter erupted in gasps, because this wasn't just reunion. It was resurrection. Dr. Zhang's medical records didn't lie. Rex's shoulder bore the same L-shaped scar as Derek's photo. The microchip, long malfunctioning, matched Shadow's service number. But the clincher came when Derek, tears streaming, whispered a command in Dutch, a language only elite K-9 units used. Rex immediately dropped into a perfect downstay, something he'd never done for shelter staff. Ella's hands covered her mouth as the truth crystallized. This wasn't just a rescued dog. This was Sergeant Shadow, 34th Military Working Dog Division, presumed dead in action. The odds of him surviving, ending up here, bonding with her first, it wasn't coincidence. It was destiny. The shelter lobby fell silent as Derek squared his shoulders. When he barked Achtung, German for attention, Rex's transformation was instantaneous. Gone was the timid shelter dog. In his place stood a battle-trained K-9 at perfect attention, eyes locked on his handler. Derek's voice broke as he murmured, "Such gut, Shadow, such ein guter Hund." Rex's entire body wriggled with suppressed joy, tail thumping in military-perfect rhythm. Ella, Joyce, and Dr. Jiang watched through tears as man and dog reunited with a precision that could only mean one thing. Their bond had survived war, separation, and unimaginable suffering. And now they were whole again. The shelter's lobby became a sacred space as Derek Vaughn lowered himself from his wheelchair onto the floor. Rex, no Shadow, inhaled deeply at his handler's collar, then erupted into frantic licks, whining like a puppy as Derek buried his face in the dog's scruff. Shelter staff wept openly as the German Shepherd alternated between inspecting Derek's prosthetic leg and wagging his entire rear end. Ella stood apart, one hand over her mouth, watching this battle-hardened veteran sob into his dog's fur. In that moment, the years of suffering fell away. The abandoned dog and the broken soldier weren't just reunited. They were remembering how to breathe. The paperwork told a harrowing tale. After the IED blast, Shadow had been shipped stateside for medical evaluation at Lackland Air Force Base. Deemed unsuitable for service due to trauma, he'd been adopted out, only to disappear from his new home months later. Derek's fists clenched reading the report. "He was looking for me," he rasped. Ella watched Shadow press against Derek's thigh, that military straight posture returning as if he'd never forgotten his training. The final piece fell into place when Derek found Shadow's old tags in his duffel bag. The metallic jingle made the dog's ears snap forward, a sound he hadn't heard in 3 years, yet remembered with his whole body. 3:17 a.m. The nightmare crested like a wave. Derek bolted upright, drenched in sweat, his shout dying in the darkness. Before he could reach for his medication, warm weight settled across his chest. Shadow, attuned to his handler's distress from the next room, had already positioned himself in the exact pressure point technique military dogs learn for PTSD episodes. Derek's shaking hands buried in fur as Shadow licked away his tears. Down the hall, Ella watched through cracked doors, understanding now why this dog had connected with her so deeply. Shadow wasn't just healing Derek. He was finally fulfilling his purpose again after years of exile. Dr. Ben Carter stared at Derek's latest scans in disbelief. The veteran's physical progress since Shadow's return defied medical expectations. Where weeks of traditional therapy had failed, the big German Shepherd succeeded, nudging Derek to stand during water therapy, circling protectively during painful exercises, even retrieving dropped canes with military precision. But the real breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday morning, when Shadow deliberately positioned himself just out of reach. Derek, without thinking, took 3 unaided steps to close the distance. The entire rehabilitation team erupted in applause as Shadow wagged furiously, his mission accomplished. Some bonds, it seemed, could mend even the most broken bodies. The epiphany struck Ella during Shadow's first bath at Derek's home. As she massaged medicated shampoo into his scars, Shadow licked her wrist, the same gesture he'd used to comfort Derek during night terrors. The pieces clicked. Her divorce had left her hollowed out, just like Shadow. Her work with trauma patients prepared her to recognize Derek's pain. This wasn't random chance. She'd been the bridge they needed. Across the room, Derek met her gaze, his silent nod acknowledging the truth. Their trio had been drawn together by wounds only they could heal. Nicole Mitchell's proposal left Ella speechless. The VA wanted to replicate Shadow and Derek's success by pairing traumatized veterans with rescued K-9s. "You're the only one who's seen both sides," Nicole explained. Shadow, sensing the importance of the moment, rested his head on Ella's knee, the same way he'd first touched her at the shelter. Derek's quiet, "He chose you too," sealed her decision. As paperwork was signed, Shadow demonstrated his worth yet again, interrupting to deposit a slobbery tennis ball in Dr. Carter's lap. Laughter filled the room, the sound of 3 broken souls finding not just healing, but a new purpose. The desert sunset painted Sky Valley gold as Derek, Ella, and Shadow gathered on the back porch. No wheelchairs in sight, just a man standing tall, a woman leaning into his side, and a once broken dog watching over them both. Shadow's ears perked at some distant sound. His body relaxed in a way shelter staff would never have believed possible. Inside, framed photos told their story. Military Shadow beside young Derek, abandoned wrecks at the shelter, and now this. A family forged in the unlikeliest of fires. As Ella's fingers scratched behind those familiar scarred ears, Shadow sighed contentedly. The war was over. Finally, they were home. The PBS documentary crew packed away their gear, still wiping their eyes. Shadow's story, from battlefield to abandonment to healing, had broken viewing records. But the real impact was visible in the letters flooding in. Veterans requesting K-9 partners, shelters implementing Ella's quiet bonding techniques, families adopting unadoptable dogs. In the film's final shot, Shadow trots proudly between Derek and Ella, his service vest gleaming in the sun. The caption reads, Sergeant Shadow Vaughn, retired MWD. 278 searches completed. One miraculous homecoming. Not bad for a dog once scheduled for euthanasia. Joyce Parker smiled at the shelter's new plaque, the Shadow Vaughn Memorial Wing. What began as one broken dog story had transformed Riverside County Animal Services. Military K-9 adoption programs, trauma-informed training, even an emergency medical fund. Ella often brought Shadow to visit, where he'd solemnly inspect each new rescue before offering a reassuring lick. As Derek told every visitor, these animals aren't damaged goods. They're heroes waiting for their next mission. The proof trotted beside him, tail wagging, forever on duty as a living testament to redemption. The old paperback still sits on Ella's shelf, dog-eared page marking where she'd been reading when Shadow first approached. Sometimes, when Derek's away at VA appointments, she'll open it and whisper the words that started it all. Without fail, Shadow abandons whatever he's doing to rest his head in her lap, just like that life-changing day at the shelter. The scar on his shoulder has faded now, but the love in his eyes remains as bright as ever. It's a quiet reminder that sometimes, the most extraordinary miracles begin with something simple. Showing up, being present, and letting broken creatures choose their own time to heal. Joyce Parker hit play on the shelter's archived footage, revealing nighttime images that took everyone's breath away. While the world slept, Shadow had paced his kennel not in panic, but in perfect military patrol patterns. The timestamp showed 2:37 a.m. as the dog suddenly froze, ears pivoting toward the parking lot where Ella's car would arrive hours later. He knew, whispered Finley Parker. The video evidence was undeniable. Even at his lowest point, Shadow had maintained his training, watching for threats, waiting for his handler. Derek's hands trembled watching the footage. His partner hadn't broken. Not really. The soldier in Shadow had simply been waiting for the right moment to stand down. The veterinary scanner beeped weakly over Shadow's shoulder. A faded microchip with corrupted data. Dr. Natalie Jiang traced the partial serial number to a blackout period in military records. This chip was deactivated intentionally, she realized. The grim truth emerged. Shadow had been smuggled out of Lackland by a dishonest contractor, sold to a family who later abandoned him when his PTSD symptoms surfaced. Derek's face darkened with rage. Not at the dog's suffering, but at the system that failed him. As if sensing his distress, Shadow nudged Derek's prosthetic leg, then demonstrated a flawless cover position at his left side. Some bonds, the gesture said, couldn't be erased by bureaucracy. Ella spread the shocking statistics across Derek's kitchen table. Over 300 military working dogs are retired annually, yet fewer than half find qualified homes. Shadow's case wasn't rare, it was systemic. The camera zoomed in on his scarred muzzle resting atop a photo of his old K-9 unit. "We ask everything of them," Derek rasped, scratching behind Shadow's ears. "Then act surprised when they can't just be pets afterward." That night, Ella drafted the proposal that would become the Vaughn Foster Act, mandating lifetime care for retired MWDs. Shadow supervised from his bed, tail thumping whenever Derek said "good dog" in that special tone reserved for heroes coming home. It happened during Shadow's first public appearance, a veterans charity gala. When an elderly World War II vet knelt with difficulty to greet him, Shadow immediately sat at attention. Then, as the man whispered about his own long-gone war dog, a single tear rolled down Shadow's furry cheek. The photograph went viral. A battle-scarred German shepherd crying in perfect silence while a broken soldier comforted him. Donations flooded in overnight. But for Derek and Ella, the real miracle was watching Shadow wake the next morning without his usual nightmare tremors. Some wounds, it seemed, could only heal when you stopped being the patient and started being the medicine. The unopened divorce papers still sat in Ella's bedside drawer when she first met Shadow. It wasn't until Derek found her sobbing over them one night that she confessed. Her ex had claimed she wasn't nurturing enough. Shadow, hearing her distress, did something extraordinary. He retrieved his favorite toy and dropped it in her lap, then rested his head on her knee, the same way he'd first approached her at the shelter. "Funny?" Derek murmured, watching the dog comfort her. "He only does that for people he thinks are his to protect." In that moment, Ella understood why Shadow had chosen her. They'd both been waiting for someone to see the love they still had to give. The VA therapy group fell silent when Derek gave the order in Dutch, "Verdedigen, defend." Shadow, dozing at his feet, exploded into action, placing himself between Derek and an imagined threat, teeth bared, body rigid. Then, at Derek's soft rustig, "Easy," he instantly relaxed. The psychologists exchanged stunned looks. Most retired MWDs lost precision after 6 months. Shadow had retained perfect discipline through abandonment and trauma. Later, as Ella rubbed his belly, she marveled at how love and duty could intertwine. The world had tried to break this dog's spirit, but some bonds even time couldn't touch. The embossed invitation left them speechless. Shadow was being honored at a special Veterans Day ceremony. As Air Force One flew them east, Derek kept checking Shadow's service vest, still unable to believe this was real. The climax came when the president knelt to greet Shadow, and the dog demonstrated a perfect, reporting for duty posture before gently licking the commander-in-chief's hand. Back home, Joyce Parker proudly displayed the photo where Shadow's journey began. His empty kennel at Riverside Shelter now bore a plaque, "No creature is beyond redemption." That night, Shadow slept curled between Derek and Ella, his paws twitching as he dreamed. Not of bombs and loss, but of children's laughter and endless belly rubs. It started as a simple goodwill tour, but when Shadow met 6-year-old leukemia patient Emma, something magical happened. Without prompting, he climbed gingerly onto her hospital bed and laid his head on her free arm. Then, as cameras discreetly recorded, he began singing along to her lullaby in soft, harmonic howls. The video garnered 20 million views in a day. But the real miracle came weeks later, when Emma's mother called with news. Her daughter's white blood cell count had improved dramatically after Shadow's visit. "Dogs don't cure cancer," Dr. Ben Carter cautioned. "But hope? That's powerful medicine." Shadow, hearing his name, thumped his tail against Derek's leg as if to say, "Told you I wasn't done serving." The rambunctious Belgian Malinois rescue barreled into their lives like a tornado. Shadow, now 9 years old, observed the hyperactive puppy with weary dignity, until the little one triggered Derek's PTSD by knocking over a chair. What happened next brought Ella to tears. Shadow calmly herded the puppy into a timeout corner using gentle nose prods, then returned to press against Derek's shaking hands. It was the moment they realized Shadow was ready to pass the torch. Under his watchful eye, the Malinois named Rookie began learning veteran assistance skills. And when Rookie finally mastered cover position, Shadow did something unprecedented. He licked the puppy's face, then flopped over in a play bow. The student had become the teacher. The vet's diagnosis hit like a gut punch: lymphoma. Shadow was 12 now, his muzzle gone gray, but still reporting for duty each morning. As the chemotherapy took its toll, Derek and Ella took turns sleeping on the floor beside his bed. Then came the night Shadow struggled to his feet, nudging them both toward the bedroom. When they resisted, he gave a single, firm woof, the same command he'd used in Afghanistan when clearing Derek from danger zones. Through tears, they obeyed. Shadow passed peacefully the next morning, curled in his favorite sunbeam, surrounded by his family and Rookie's warm weight against his back. His last act? One slow tail wag as Derek whispered, "Mission complete, soldier." The honor guard's salute echoed across Arlington as Shadow's flag-draped casket was carried to his final resting place beside other military working dogs. Derek, standing ramrod straight in his dress uniform despite his prosthetic leg, accepted the folded flag with trembling hands. What the cameras didn't show was Rookie, now fully grown, lying motionless at the grave's edge throughout the ceremony, his first perfect long down without Shadow's guidance. As taps played, Ella pressed her face into the familiar scent of Shadow's service vest, now cradled in her arms. The world saw a hero's farewell, but for this broken little family, it was the end of an era that had saved them all. While cleaning Shadow's gear, Derek discovered a tiny compartment in his old military collar. Inside, folded with military precision, was a photo of himself in uniform. The same photo Shadow had licked every night at the shelter. Ella gasped, realizing the truth. This battered German shepherd had carried his handler's image through abandonment, starvation, and despair. Like a compass needle pointing north, Shadow's heart had never lost its true bearing. That night, Derek framed the photo beside Shadow's ashes, while Rookie slept with the empty collar clutched between his paws. A sacred relic passed from one generation of heroes to the next. The Malinois paced restlessly for hours after Shadow's passing, sniffing every corner of the house before finally settling at the foot of Derek and Ella's bed. At 3:17 a.m., the exact time Shadow used to wake from nightmares, Rookie suddenly bolted upright, ears cocked toward the doorway. The motion-activated camera captured nothing, but the dog's tail began wagging furiously at empty air. When Derek reached down to comfort him, Rookie licked his hand once before sighing contentedly and curling up to sleep. The next morning, they found Shadow's favorite tennis ball mysteriously placed in the center of his now-vacant dog bed. Some bonds, it seemed, even death couldn't sever. The newly dedicated Shadow Vaughn Memorial Wing at the Palm Springs VA looked nothing like a typical clinic. Rescued dogs lounged at veterans' feet, while trainers like Ella taught them to recognize panic attacks. Rookie, now a certified therapy dog, demonstrated how to interrupt night terrors by gently resting his head on patients' chests, Shadow's signature move. But the real magic happened in quiet moments, when broken soldiers whispered their stories to understanding canine ears. As Derek often said, watching Rookie work his magic. The war might leave scars, but love always finds a way through. The positive test lay between them on the kitchen table as Derek and Ella sat in stunned silence. Rookie sniffed it curiously before trotting to Shadow's memorial shelf and returning with a worn dog tag in his mouth. Through tears, Derek read the engraved name aloud, Sergeant Shadow Vaughn, MW 347. 9 months later, when baby Shane Vaughn came screaming into the world, the first thing he grasped was Rookie's offered paw. And on the wall above his crib, Shadow's service portrait, watching over this new life his love had helped make possible. The graduation ceremony at Lackland Air Force Base carried special significance as Rookie received his official certification. But when the instructor presented his vest, the Malinois did something unexpected. He gently took it to Derek first for inspection, just as Shadow had always done. The hardened military trainers blinked back tears as Derek knelt to fasten the straps, his voice breaking on the traditional command, "Report for duty, soldier." That night, they visited Shadow's grave, where Rookie laid his first earned tennis ball beside the headstone. The circle was complete. The student had become the master. The healed had become the healer. The home video went viral for all the right reasons. Baby Shane, wobbling on unsteady legs, took 3 teetering steps before face-planting directly into Rookie's fluffy chest. The Malinois immediately rolled onto his back, cradling the giggling child safely against his belly, an instinct Shadow had demonstrated with countless trauma patients. As Derek and Ella cheered, Rookie's tail thumped in that same rhythmic cadence his mentor had used. The comments poured in, "Legacy of love. Heroes raising heroes. The best of us lives on in paws and tiny feet." But the most profound moment came later, when Shane fell asleep clutching Shadow's old tags, and Rookie stood guard all night. Derek's testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee was supposed to last 15 minutes. 2 hours later, not a single legislator had left as he described Shadow's impact. complete with video of Rookie interrupting his PTSD episodes. When Senator Reynolds skeptically asked, "Surely one dog can't make that much difference?" Ella silently opened a laptop showing Shadow's Memorial Foundation statistics. 247 veteran canine pairs placed, 89% reduction in suicide attempts. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. That night, as the Vaughn family walked past the Lincoln Memorial, Rookie suddenly paused and wagged at seemingly nothing, right where Shadow's plaque would later be installed. The annual memorial walk always began with Derek carrying Shadow's empty leash, until the year 5-year-old Shane insisted on holding it himself. The crowd parted as the little boy marched proudly ahead, Rookie flanking him in perfect cover position, while Derek and Ella followed arm in arm. When they reached the reviewing stand, Shane surprised everyone by snapping a crisp salute just like Daddy's. But the true moment of grace came when an elderly Vietnam vet knelt to thank him, and Shane immediately passed him Shadow's leash, saying, "You need him more than me, mister." In that instant, everyone present understood. Love wasn't meant to be kept. It was meant to be passed on. Sky Valley's desert skies blazed orange as the Vaughn family took their evening stroll, Derek's arm around Ella, Shane racing ahead with Rookie, Shadow's ashes now mixed with wildflower seeds along the path. When Rookie suddenly bolted back to nudge Derek's pocket, they discovered why. He'd sensed the new ultrasound photo before they'd even told anyone. As Shane giggled at Rookie's slobbery kisses, a warm gust of wind sent a swirl of wildflower petals dancing around them. Ella smiled through tears, remembering Shadow's first tentative lick all those years ago. Some stories don't really end. They just change form, from paw prints to baby steps, from battlefields to backyards, from one generation's hero to the next's guardian angel.